I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Collin Plume, CEO of Noble Gold Investments. Thank you so much for being here online with me today.
Thank you,
Join us.
Charlotte. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And it's our first time talking. What we're going to be focusing on is silver, and in particular, the industrial side of silver. As most people who follow the market probably know, silver does have that dual element to it where it has its precious and its industrial side. So to start off, maybe you could talk about what we've seen this year. Which side of silver are you seeing as the more stronger side?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's really been a matter of uh, the rush in silver started actually last year during the pandemic. We saw this pullback in the price where it kind of settled in the high $13 range. And I've been, talking about silver for many years and the industrial uses. And I was envisioning that, the things that were going to happen did, whereas with everybody moving home, that would create a lot of silver demand on a number of levels. Obviously, what we're talking on today, Zoom, and all of these, functionalities, people working remotely creates a lot of silver demand because of all the data, all these data centers that are all over the world that they're storing the data to keep everybody remote. That's a tremendous amount of use. When employees work in the same location, they can keep the infrastructure there, but now everyone's so spread out. They're building data centers in Africa and lots of other countries to keep all this information, all the information we need to work. So you saw that sort of use really take off. Then you had the silver mines shut down for many months all over the world. Mexico is a big distributor of silver, so they were shut down for a long time during COVID. So you really had this pent up demand, and then the industrial use across the board really started to pick up. And so that's why we saw silver really, really skyrocket. Gold also followed suit, but we saw it break through 20 and continue to kind of push through, which it probably should have hit that point anyway early, but it just took some time for it to push through. So you have just that one specific use, and then obviously, electric vehicles have taken off all over the world, and everyone's kind of moving in that direction. So that's a big part of it. In the U.S. here, we're kind of catching up in a way to getting everybody on electric vehicles. So not just our day-to-day drivers, but also just all the buses and all the vehicles that the government uses in local communities. They're trying to get all of those to electric by, I think, 2030 is sort of their goal. So you have a lot of different demand from a lot of different places. So it helped push the price pretty significantly.
Yeah, certainly that's been a theme this past year as we work from home. Maybe we could get a little bit more specific, if you could, on industrial demand sources for silver. What are the biggest drivers there, and how is supply holding up? If you have any numbers you could share there to show the dynamics of the market.
Yeah, so solar panels is one of the biggest ones in terms of demand. They say to cover all the solar panel demand and the energy demand, it would take solar panels covering like the land mass of Spain. That's how much solar panels we need to really make the entire switch to having electric be the main driver of energy. So it's a lot of solar panels that we need, and there's a tremendous shortage out there. They if you talk to silver miners, which I do, I have clients that are silver miners. They say that we're in a significant shortage. There's hundreds of thousands of tons more we need almost every quarter to keep up with the demand, and really, unfortunately, it's not available. And so we saw that, on a small level, we saw that happen in the car industry recently, where they've had to shut down a lot of these factories because they weren't able to produce those chips that are needed for all these new high-tech cars. And a lot of one of the components in those chips is silver. So you're feeling these restrictions and the amount of silver not being able to receive by these manufacturers, and it's affecting a lot of industries. Like, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but they said the price of used cars has gone up in the US by almost 40%. That's just strictly because manufacturers can't make new cars. So people are just, now that they're out and driving again, they're looking at cars. And so prices on cars are skyrocketing. So that's affecting a lot of different industries. So yeah, I think that it's, one of those things that silver does get recycled, but so much of it is already in use that it's going to be hard for industries to keep up, kind of going forward. In terms of the precious metals industry, obviously we saw a big crunch last year. Investors were unable to, it was very difficult to get silver coins, silver bars. Luckily, we have a lot of different distributors in different locations, so we were able to get silver, but the price of that physical silver really skyrocketed last year, the physical price. So we were trying to overcome that battle. The good news is, in terms of like the products that we sell, bullion bars and coins, it seems the prices of those relative to the spot price of silver have started to come down a lot, which is good. So that's something that we're really happy about. So we're going to be able to get silver at a better price to our clients, which is really good.
That is good news. And, what are your thoughts on substitution for silver? Because obviously that's something we hear about in the metals sector, even within precious metals between palladium and platinum and the catalytic converters.
Right.
Yeah. So for silver, what uses could it be replaced in potentially? And where do you see it being, irreplaceable? You have to use silver.
I mean, for the price, I've never heard any of the miners say that there's anything that's such a good conductor that is equal to silver. So, and obviously, gold is being used in a lot of medical science, cancer research. But obviously the price, it's what, 70 to 1 price wise, gold to silver. So that's not going to be an option. Platinum and palladium are not an option. It really just comes down to finding more silver out there. That's really what I've never heard any strong arguments of any other metal that has all the properties that silver has. And so in a way, as an investor in silver, owning silver, that's a great thing. But from an industrial standpoint, it's probably pretty scary out there for some of these solar panel companies, because if they can't, find it, and they're going to have to be slowed down, and they're not going to be able to keep up production. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So, 10 years ago, silver was mostly mined as a byproduct of other metals. But that's shifted a lot over the last 5 years, and I think it will continue to shift. So I don't know what industries could replace it. It made sense with palladium and platinum. They were able to make that switch. Those metals have closer properties, and palladium is easier to mine than platinum, and so that connection made sense, even though palladium is 3 times the price almost of platinum right now. So I don't know the answer to that. I'm in the market looking for research to see if there's any other metal that can do it, but I've never found anything that they've said consistently could offer the same properties.
Really interesting and definitely tough to say. So we've been talking about silver's industrial side, but as we've been mentioning, it has its precious metal side as well. And there's lots of factors that are going on there that I'm sure you're keeping a watch on. What would you say are the most important drivers right now from the precious metal side of silver? There's so much going on with the Fed, concerns about inflation, interest rates. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, I think people today are looking at, precious metal. And it's interesting with the Fed now, releasing these inflation numbers. So, from an investment point of view, when you see the government saying in the U.S. that inflation is above 4%, we haven't seen numbers like that have been reported. Now, I believe the CPI and the inflation is always much higher than what the government has told us, because ever since Reagan was in office, they've always changed how they determine the CPI, and they've pulled out things, housing costs, and certain things that have. I mean, if you just put housing costs back in, then I think inflation would be closer to the number that I think it is, which is I think it's anywhere from 8 to 12%. I think it's been like that since last year. But so I think that investors now today are saying, if I can buy limited supply items that and hold on to them even for a few years, like precious metals, I'm going to do much better than keeping the money in a savings account and making a 0.5%. And so, even though the stock market has done really well, a lot of people that invest with us are looking at the whole pie, and they're saying, I want to get some of my money out of savings accounts. I want to get it out of bonds, because I need to try to keep up with inflation. I can't make 1.5% in a bond. It won't let me live the same lifestyle that I want to live in the future. It just won't keep up. So I think now more than ever, people are looking at precious metals as a way to hedge against this really rising inflation. And I don't know one person that is not feeling inflation right now. I think everyone feels it, from the supermarket to cost of, as I was mentioning, used cars up 45% in terms of prices. So there's not many areas right now that are getting more affordable.
Right. And when you talk about that retirement aspect, it's really interesting because I'm sure people that you speak to are getting a little bit worried about how their savings may stand up to inflation. So when you look at people who are asking these types of questions and talking about integrating precious metals like silver into their portfolio, what allocation do you suggest to people, and how do you suggest they get that exposure? Is it the actual metal or stocks or some combination?
Yeah, I mean, Noble Gold, what we do is the physical precious metal. So, if that's something that they want to do, that's what we're really focused on. Our typical client wants control of their assets, so we put them into a self-directed IRA, which is similar to your our RISP, I think it's called. It's kind of maybe I didn't say the name of the retirement plan in Canada correctly, but we offer that self-directed component where someone can actually own the physical gold themselves. The other way to do it, as you mentioned, would be like ETFs or the stock version. And in terms of allocation, we don't tell anyone to do anything. We're just here helping people acquire precious metals. So our job is just to educate them on what we do in the physical metal space, and then ultimately, people will make their own determination. I've seen financial advisors make recommendations anywhere from 3 to 10% are the numbers that I've seen. But obviously, it's really predicated upon what that individual is looking for in their retirement. A lot of our clients are closer to retirement, so they're looking to be on the safer side. And precious metals is typically being seen as a safer kind of hedge against other parts of the portfolio. But there's not only just all the things that we mentioned, but I think the one thing that hasn't really gone into effect is Biden's his infrastructure plan also That plan will obviously help the price of silver, coupled with him pushing for the Paris Accord. That President Trump pulled us out of and now went back in. We're going to focus on climate change. You can't help climate change without getting into EV, moving in the direction. That's the main push. So this administration is really pushing us in that direction. So I don't even think we've seen all the effects of where Biden's administration is going to go. So there's good infrastructure right now for what the price of silver can do.
Right. And, of course, we've been hearing mostly about those plans in the US in the context of copper. So it's great that you shed some light on what it could mean for silver. And I think your last comment there leads me to the question of price, which I'm sure you must get asked about that all the time. What do all of these circumstances add up to for the price of silver, in your opinion?
I think it's silver broke $49 in September of 2011, and it hit that number also in the early 1980s. If you look at the early 1980s, you look at 2011. I mean, the amount of industrial uses that have come into the market, even in the last 10 years, let alone the last 40 years, is a strong indicator that silver is going to be something that is going to be definitely needed and wanted. I think that my belief is that there will be shortages by next year. I think it's going to get much more difficult to get it, which we saw during the pandemic. I think we're going to start to see that again. So, I've always looked at silver, and when talking to miners, they've always said that they thought silver should be anywhere from $80 to $100 just based on the demand, and also how difficult it is to mine. I think if you look at mining actual true costs of silver, most of the miners that I would talk to would say that the true cost, 2-3 years ago was in the high $18 to $21 range. So now the demand is higher. There's more interest. People, are willing to pay more, which means they're going to build more mines for this. So I would imagine that just pulling it out of the ground is going to be in the mid 20s. So if that cost to pull it out of the ground is 25 or 26, then it gives it good fundamentals for it to, to hit those higher numbers. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see it break, in the next 12 to 18 months, if we see it break 40 again. Just the demand is really through the roof right now.
Right. And, a lot of the time when people talk about the silver price, they speak about it in relation to the gold price. Like if we have a silver price of X amount, then I expect a gold price of Y amount. Do you look at it that way as well? Do you have a place you would be looking at gold to go if silver rises substantially higher?
Yeah, I mean, I think the gold to silver ratio is something that was always discussed because the ratio is so off from where it was. We used to be at 14 or 16 to 1, and now we're at 70, somewhere around there to 1. I don't really look at that ratio too much anymore because both of the metals seem to have strong industrial demand, and obviously gold has always been bought by central banks as a hedge. They've looked at it as a great bartering instrument. They put it in their central bank or they store it in Bank of New York, and then they can lend or borrow money against it. So I don't really look at that gold to silver ratio being too tied together anymore. I think they're moving independent. On a day to day, if you do look at the chart over the last 365 days, the only thing that you can look at, and it doesn't mean that this is an indicator, but typically I think out of 80% of those days, if gold goes up, silver goes up, and if silver goes down, gold goes down. They do have that connection, but they're not moving at the same pace, obviously, because silver going up $1, $1.50, $2 in a day has been happening, and that percentage definitely dwarfs the percentages that gold's been going up.
All right, definitely that makes sense. As we're wrapping up here, I wondered if you had any final thoughts that you wanted to leave the audience with on silver or on any of the other precious metals if you'd like to go there. And also remind us where people can find you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, Noble Gold Investments. We're U.S. based company, so they can check out our website is a great place to go, and we have free guides on all the different precious metals from gold to silver to platinum, palladium. Yeah, I'd say in closing, I think obviously silver is something we talked about at length, but gold should not be forgotten. There have been tremendous strides in industry with gold from this attempt for us to go to Mars, this Moxie, that piece of equipment. There is a lot of gold components in that, us moving into space. So they're using gold in so many different ways. Obviously, cancer research, there's been a lot of push to use gold because of some of the properties it has. It makes it safer than some of the other metals that are out there. So I think that, obviously I love silver and it's an exciting time to get it, but I wouldn't sleep on what gold can do also, because at the end of the day, more gold is going to be held in central banks, and more institutions are going to buy gold and sort of take that inventory off the market. And I think that will help the price too. So I think both of those metals are really strong right
Okay, that sounds like a great point to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming to share your thoughts and hope to have you back
now.
in the
Thanks.
future.
Thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate it.
Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Collin Plume with Noble Gold Investments.